What is going on, Dynasty Leaguers? Welcome into another episode of Drafting Lessons, the DLF TV show, where I grab a guest every single week and we run through a mock Dynasty startup or just recently some mock rookie drafts as well too. So we've just finished up the 12 spots in those rookie drafts, 1.01 to 112. We did 2 per video. So if you missed any of those, if you still have any 2020 rookie drafts going on, please go back and check those out with a lot of fantastic guests like Ryan McDowell. J Mike was just the last one as well too. A lot of fantastic people coming on and helping me mock draft and talk through a lot of these rookies. So it is the beginning of June, and that is the beginning, more than likely for a lot of people, of Dynasty startup season. So this is going to be the first, 2020 post-draft Dynasty startup. It's going to be a SUPERFLEX one, and I thought I would go right to one of our co-hosts on the DLF flagship Dynasty League podcast and host of Dynasty Game Night as well too, SUPERFLEX Pod. A lot of awesome stuff. Matt Price, how's it going, man?
It's going great, man. I'm excited to be on this. I got to do a couple of these video shows when we were doing the DLF daily thing for a little while, but it's been some time, so I appreciate you having me on, Addison.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, we're going to be running through. This is a 12-round Dynasty startup SUPERFLEX draft, just the normal. I just put in here a quarterback and a SUPERFLEX, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end, a flex, and then 4 bench. That'll give us to 12 rounds here to run through. And before we get into this, because this is a SUPERFLEX one that's becoming way more popular, almost industry standard for a lot of Dynasty startups that are happening right now. Matt, whenever you go into a new SUPERFLEX startup, is there a generic strategy that you go in, knowing that you want to come out with 5 quarterbacks, or you want to grab one of the top ones, or are you waiting on quarterbacks? What is your general SUPERFLEX Dynasty startup strategy?
Yeah, for quarterback position specifically, I'm looking to get one of those top 5 guys. If not, then I'm happy to wait a little bit and just grab a larger amount of them. But if I can get the Mahomes, Jackson, Murray, Prescott, or Watson, I think those guys are worth paying up for in the first or second round. I've seen all 5 go in the first round several times this offseason. So if you don't have one of those early to mid picks, there's a chance that you might not get one of them. But if I don't get one of those top 5 guys, then I feel like the next tier down is pretty large. So I'm happy to wait. In terms of the number I want to come away with, it depends on the quality again. Like if I end up with 1 or 2 of those top guys, then I'm usually okay with. I like to kind of roll the dice a little bit, maybe with the injury card a little bit, where I'm happy to have 2 of those top guys and that kind of carry my team. But if I get down into the 10 to 20 range at quarterbacks, then I'm going to want to grab at least 3, if not 4 or 5 at some point. So there are certainly drafts though where I'll try to go and come out of like the first 6 rounds with 3 to 4 quarterbacks. So it just kind of depends on the flow of the draft and how that's playing out. In general, I like to trade back if possible. But it seems like this season, especially in the startups that I've done, most people are trying to trade back. So sometimes that's more difficult. So sometimes you got to remain fluid. Just to give a quick example, John Bosch and I own a DLF Champions team together, and we wanted to trade back. And of course, everybody else did too. But we were able to then trade up instead because of that and use that price advantage, kind of leverage that fact that everybody wanted to trade down instead of up. And we were able to come away with 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick, and in the first 2 rounds of the draft. So and we picked up Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson with 2 of those first-round picks. So it just kind of depends on how it's going, and you have to be flexible depending on what the other GMs in your league want to do.
So let me ask you, because a lot of times people will ask, when should you take a quarterback in SUPERFLEX, right? And so sometimes, and I always say, and I think a lot of people always say as well too, that that's very league dependent, because you can be in a startup where a lot of people just don't really value the quarterback position, especially when compared to some of the elite running backs or maybe some of the elite wide receivers in Dynasty. So when if you find yourself and you're still staring at like Pat Mahomes and you're kind of in the back half of the first round, and so that maybe tells you at least maybe those 6 owners don't really value quarterbacks as kind of the industry standard, would you then try to take a quarterback there, or are you reading the draft board and trying to come away with more stud skill players and stuff, and then grab quarterbacks later, or are you trying to trade back?
I think if one of those top five, especially the top two guys, are there, maybe even three, if we want to throw Murray into that, and Prescott is entering that conversation too a little bit. I think if it's one of those guys, then I would absolutely still pull the trigger, because I don't know. I know it does. The value of the player certainly does matter when the rest of the league doesn't really value them as much as you do. But at the same time, everybody is going to need a quarterback at some point, and if I have two of those top guys and people are still punting on quarterback, and in the 5th and 6th round I'm still able to grab a guy like even in like the Daniel Jones, Matt Ryan, Matt Stafford range, and then I have those, and quarterbacks are always going to be a valuable commodity in those leagues, no matter if you value them or not, because there aren't going to be too many of the teams winning championships, with one quarterback, say in the later end of those teams, like a Drew Lock, Sam Darnold, something like that, and then their next guy is just like a waiver wire quarterback. They're going to soon realize the value of those quarterbacks, and then when they need to come get one, you're going to be the one they have to come to, and you're going to be able to control the market there. So I think controlling that quarterback market early on, if you can, in the leagues where those owners are not valuing them as highly as you are, then they will eventually come back to you, because they're just going to need them. You just are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I say we just get right into it here. Like I said, it's going to be Superflex, 12 rounds. Everything's pretty basic. We'll just assume PPR, no premiums for anything like that. So just run of the mill, regular Superflex, and we're drafting out of the 7th spot. So let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Alrighty, Matt. We are on the clock at 1.07. The first 6 picks went Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Michael Thomas, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, and Dalvin Cook. Basically the top 5 running backs and Michael Thomas. So Superflex still. So 1.07, all of the quarterbacks are still there. DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Chris Godwin are the best available wide receivers here. And then in terms of running backs, we're looking at like Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, the rookies, Josh Jacobs, all those guys like that. So at the 1.07 here, where are we looking to kick off our team?
Yeah, this is a pretty easy decision. If I end up with a 107 in a super flex draft and Patrick Mahomes falls to me there, I'm absolutely jumping that. No question. I think the greatest combination of age and upside of any player in a super flex format you can find. And I haven't done one yet this offseason where he hasn't been the first or second player off the board. So to see him here at 107 just feels like a complete gift to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I have trouble with the accuracy of this mock draft simulator because I mean when you look at like how the rest of the first and then into the second went on the snake, Lamar went right after us, and then Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson. So in terms of 4 quarterbacks in the first 16 picks, I think is fairly accurate, but the placement of them is kind of where I struggle with this at times. But that was pretty easy. It's Patrick Mahomes. I feel like anybody who's there at the 107 is either taking Pat Mahomes or they're going to trade back because somebody else is going to realize the value of Pat Mahomes at the 107 as well too. So I think that was pretty easy, and I don't really think we need to talk much more about that. So the rest of the first round, it went Lamar Jackson, as I said, right after us. And then DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, Kyler Murray, Tyreek Hill. And then in the second round went Juju, Deshaun Watson, Chris Godwin, Joe Mixon, and then Nick Chubb at the 205. So at the 206 here, we're looking at Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Miles Sanders, Amari Cooper, A.J. Brown. And then for quarterbacks is Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson. And then any of the tight ends are there too. So if you wanted Kittle or Kelsey, you can go that route as well too.
No, this feels like another pretty easy pick just because I think there is a gigantic tier break here. Prescott is the last one on that top quarterback, two quarterback tier if you want to put Mahomes and Jackson in a tier of their own up at the top. But he's the last one of those elite guys that I think are really worth spending on from the age standpoint, the running ability standpoint. And then after that, you get into that big middle tier that I was talking about. So pretty easy selection here to grab the last guy in that tier.
Yeah, I like it a lot. And especially, it's funny because Dak Prescott, you see him down like kind of closer to quarterback 5 than quarterback 1, even though last year he was the QB2. And while that was primarily based on, a lot of of efficiency in terms of total yards. He had almost 5,000 yards, a lot of touchdowns as well too. So you would expect, he might kind of bump down a little bit here in at least 2020. And then, looking in terms of dynasty, he's still a fantastic quarterback and prospect, assuming that he signs long-term with Dallas. But it's funny because his situation actually got better from last year to this year, which is crazy, going from Randall Cobb to, CeeDee Lamb. And then a lot of people would even claim that Blake Jarwin is an upgrade over Jason Witten at this time in their careers right now. So it's just kind of funny how his situation got better on top of a quarterback 2 performance in 2019, but yet he's being drafted, as if he were more in the quarterback 5, 6 kind of territory there. So I find that really interesting. And in terms for dynasty, I'm assuming you're not really worried about the long-term contract, with Dallas. I think we all assume that he is going to be signed long-term there. But, in terms of, I guess, his future, with them drafting CeeDee Lamb, do you see or have any concerns in terms of, one of those wide receivers, be it Gallup or Amari Cooper, probably aren't long for the team with the CeeDee Lamb draft? So is that a concern to you, or are you just riding out that Dak Prescott is a really good quarterback with rushing upside, and that's what you're going for?
Yeah, and the fact that he's been a quarterback 1 basically every year in the league as a starter, right? So
right.
I think he offers again that maybe even more than Murray and Jackson. To be honest with you, he offers that consistency, that the lead upside that we've been seeing from him the last couple of years. And like you said, his situation got even better. Like, I don't even know how you're going to stop that offense. I would never admit it because my stepdad is a huge Cowboys fan, and I've always made fun of him for liking the Cowboys. But I'm kind of a Cowboys fan this season. That offense just looks like so much fun. Whether it's all the passing game weapons taking the pressure off of Zeke, it just seems like I don't know how you're going to stop that offense. So very excited for Prescott in his future. And his contract is certainly a little bit of a concern, I think. But you just think about how rarely we see franchise quarterbacks, especially top 5 to 10 quarterbacks, hit the open market like that. So maybe he holds out, and that's a concern. If he's really asking for $40 million and Jerry doesn't want to give it to him, I guess that's a concern too. But it seems like they have all the pieces in place right now on that offense, and I don't know why Jerry or anybody on that staff would want to jeopardize this window that they're in right now. So I'm not really thinking too much about that. And if he does go somewhere else, I still think Dak's a good quarterback. Obviously it's better in this offense that we see in front of us, but I think he could probably elevate pretty much any team he went to.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I mean, if he goes anywhere else, he's going to be signed to be a franchise quarterback.
Right.
Kirk Cousins went from Washington to Minnesota and was still maybe not just as good as he was in Washington, because he was slinging the rock when he was with them. But I mean, he's still a very good quarterback. So anybody who goes after Dak in free agency is going to know what they have, and they're going to want to utilize him.
Absolutely.
So 3.07 here. We're on the clock. The rest of the second round went Derrick Henry, Mike Evans, Josh Jacobs, Julio Jones, DJ Moore, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then the third round went George Kittle, Jonathan Taylor, Russell Wilson, Kenny Golladay, Leonard Fournette, and then Travis Kelce. So 3.07 here, we're looking at Miles Sanders, Amari Cooper, A.J. Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., Cortland Sutton, Josh Allen is there at quarterback, Austin Eckler, Calvin Ridley, Joe Burrow, DK Metcalf, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift. A lot of these kind of a mix of youth and veterans that are still producing as well too. So 3.07, I imagine we're probably looking at another at least dipping into the skill position here. But let me know, Matt, where we want to go.
Yeah, this is almost a dream scenario for me, and I wish this was a little bit of a real league, because one of the main problems with drafting two quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds is that opportunity cost you lose to be able to take an elite running back or wide receiver, right? So, but here we are, we're sitting here at 307, and Miles Sanders is still on the board. He's my current running back 7 in Dynasty, so I'm happy to take him here as I think the 12th or 13th running back so far that's gone in this draft. So that's a really easy selection to me. We've seen, it's probably coach speak, whatever. whatever at this point. Who knows? They probably still bring in a veteran at some point to at least, back up Miles Sanders. But we've seen the news blurbs lately that he is going to be the bell cow back there. And based on what we saw the last half of the 2019 season, I'm really excited for Miles Sanders with that offense in general. Great offensive line. Now they've added a bunch of wide receivers there to pay a little bit more respect to the passing game. So very excited for Miles Sanders, and having taken 2 top quarterbacks, ending up with I think a running back 1 is pretty exciting for this team.
So I have been a vocal I don't know what the opposite of advocate is, vocal downplayer of Miles Sanders' dynasty value, which is funny because I went to Penn State. I'm a Penn State guy. So, you would think that I would be like Saquon Barkley on Miles Sanders, right? But yeah, I'm concerned because I'm concerned that a lot of people look at the second half of the year of 2019 as his breakout, and that was, to me, mainly because Jordan Howard got hurt, right? And there was really nobody else as well too. Even when you look at his receiving numbers, there was nobody else for Carson Wentz to throw to. It was the 2 tight ends and then like Greg Ward. That was essentially it. That's what they were working with. So, just out of necessity, Miles Sanders was out there a huge amount of the time and grabbing a lot of receptions, getting a lot of the work in the rushing game as well too. But, we saw Boston Scott was still a thorn in the side of a lot of Miles Sanders owners because, you could see one of those running backs out there and just maybe the way that the TV camera was, you see him split out wide and then Wentz hits him in the flat and then he breaks off like a 20-yard reception. And you're like, Miles Sanders, but that was actually Boston Scott, So yeah. I have a lot of concerns in terms of Doug Peterson's, history with running backs, with utilizing multiple running backs, never giving one, kind of more of the workload than anybody else. And if he does, it's really capped at like 60%. There's been a lot of people like, I think of like, I don't know if it was Graham Barfield or Scott Barrett who tweeted out about, the number of times a Doug Peterson running back had more than 60% of the snaps, had more than like 18 touches per game, stuff like that. Is a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing from a lot of other people as well too. And it concerns me because I think they're going to use Sanders and I think he's going to be the lead dog, but they also have Boston Scott. They re-signed Corey Clement, who, I mean, nobody in the Dynasty community likes, but I feel like Doug Peterson likes enough to at least use him. And then there's also talk of them bringing in potentially Devontae Freeman. LaShawn McCoy is there. Lamar Miller's out there too. Like all these guys that the Dynasty community probably thinks are dead, but Doug Peterson doesn't think are dead. And then he's going to use them. It's kind of in the same vein as when Carlos Hyde signed with the Texans last year. And everybody was like, well, Hyde is washed up. This is Duke Johnson's backfield. Turns out Carlos Hyde rushes for 1,000 yards and Duke Johnson's kind of an afterthought. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but I'm concerned for the usage of Miles Sanders. So maybe help convince me back onto my Penn State love of Miles Sanders here.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily true. Certainly with his stint as the Eagles, that Peterson has been a committee back kind of guy. But, back in, I think it was 2013 when he was hired in Kansas City, along with Andy Reid, followed him there. They had an elite running back there by the name of Jamal Charles. And, he was a bell cow back there. And now we're on the Eagles and we're in a situation where they finally have a really talented running back there. So I think if we look at who was on the team at that position over the last several years, then it makes sense that there was a committee in place. And you're absolutely right about 2019. If Jordan Howard hadn't gotten hurt, then we could have been looking at a committee situation the entire time. But I don't know if that's necessarily a reflection on Sanders and his talent. It was just they signed him to be the veteran. You might as well use him up for that one contract that he's going to be there on, and then turn it over to the talented rookie. And I think it just turns out that we were able to see Miles Sanders a little bit earlier than we may have otherwise, which probably bad for dynasty owners, because if we were sitting in that situation now where Howard had played out the whole season, then Sanders could absolutely be a value at this point, because there'd be even more questions marks about him, whether he could do it or not. So I get the Boston Scott concerns too. Certainly probably eats into that PPR upside a little bit. But I think in this range of the draft, once you get to that, outside of those top 5 to 6 really elite stud running backs, and maybe even less than that now, if Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon actually are going to hold out, then I think once you get past those guys, you run into concerns about that with all of them in that range. Nick Chubb, I think we've got to worry about. Kareem Hunt, I'd be way more worried about him from a PPR standpoint. And Leonard Fournette, I don't know. I just don't really trust that. 100 targets he got last season, I don't think he's going to come anywhere near that again, probably for the rest of his career, to be honest with you. Derrick Henry, he doesn't catch passes. Are we going to rely on his upside as just a pure running back at this point? And then Josh Jacobs, one of the reasons why they drafted him was that PPR upside, right? That the fact that he was such a good pass catcher in college, and now they're not using him that way. They brought in Jalen Richard, and then re-signed Jalen Richard rather. Now they brought in Lynn Bowden. So it just seems like all of these guys in that range have some kind of question marks. And Miles Sanders, at least from on paper, it looks like it's really his backfield right now, even if they do bring in, who else is left out there? Is Alfred Morris coming back from the dead? I just don't know who they're going to bring in at this point to really significantly eat into his workload, other than the PPR back and Boston Scott there. So I'm confident in him, and maybe it's just because the backs that surround him at that point have just as many questions, if not more.
So you'd rather have Sanders than Nick Chubb?
I have them in the same exact tier right now. I think I have Sanders 7 and Chubb 8. I'd have to look specifically, but I think that's where I have them.
Okay.
So same tier, same tier, but I'd be more concerned about Kareem Hunt than I would Boston Scott. I would say that.
Yeah, that's for sure. I was just curious because I'm actually next week I'm recording a versus episode of me versus Shane Manila for Sanders versus Chubb. So that's gonna be a fun one. There's a tease for everybody watching out there right now too. So that'll be a fun one, I think. He's Sanders and I'm Chubb, so that'll be a fun one. Anyway, so I like Miles Sanders in the 3rd round. I think especially whenever he's after all of these guys too. Like I could see, like, if I think I could make a case for Derrick Henry versus Miles Sanders, just kind of iffy. I think I would rather have Josh Jacobs, but like a whole round later, I'm here on Miles Sanders at this price behind all of these guys. I would rather have them too. So I'm in on the price on where you got them for sure. 100%.
And I think we're at a bit of a tier again as well. I guess we can start talking about the rookies. We haven't gotten into them yet. I don't see on the board. So I think they're an option in that range too. But at wide receiver, I'm not even really thinking about it yet because as we've seen, that position is just so deep right now. If I was going to take a wide receiver there, it probably would have been Cooper to pair, especially since we already have Dak to get that little double dip, which is probably a little bit overstated, but it is nice when it hits for you. And if we're excited about that offense and excited about Dak, then Cooper would be a decent option there too, I think.
Yeah. So we'll move on here to the 4.06. Just so you're aware, Edwards-Helaire went at 212 and Taylor went at 302.
Okay, missed that.
So the best available rookies right now are DeAndre Swift and J.K. Dobbins, and then Cam Akers is somewhere down here. There he is. So that just so you're on board with that. But anyway, So the rest of the 3rd round went Josh Allen, Amari Cooper, A.J. Brown, OBJ, and then Evan Ingram. And then for the 4th round, it went Cortland Sutton, Aaron Jones, Carson Wentz, Austin Eckler, and Melvin Gordon. So best available, Calvin Ridley, Joe Burrow, DK Metcalf, Swift, as I mentioned, Baker Mayfield, A-Rob, J.K. Dobbins, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, Jerry Jeudy, Kenyon Drake, DJ Chark, who we just had a versus episode of that dropped on Monday. So if you missed that, check that out too. That was really good from Michelle Majuk. So 4.06, where are we looking to go at here?
Here, I wouldn't be opposed to grabbing a 3rd quarterback at this spot, but I think we're really strong there already, and we're still kind of in the middle of this next pretty large tier. So I don't think we need to go there. Wide receiver starts looking really attractive here because the big names are off the board, but a lot of exciting young players, like you mentioned, Ridley, DK, still here. But I think we have to continue if we're building this, which I didn't really mention this at the top, but generally I'm a win now kind of guy. I think you grab youth early, but I think you still grab players that can help you win in the future, but also win right now. So running back, we know it's about to fall off a cliff. So I think we've got to go back to the running back position here. Still three very good options as a rookie here, and he doesn't have to be our running back one. So I think I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on J.K. Dobbins here. I just think that was my favorite fit of any of the rookie running backs in this class. Edwards-Helaire obviously landing in an amazing spot in Kansas City, but Dobbins, he just and this is totally anecdotal, I realize there's no data behind this, but he just feels like a Baltimore Ravens running back. Obviously Mark Ingram is there for year one, and that is certainly a concern, but I think there is a small chance that Dobbins is better than him from day one, and we always have the injury concern. Mark Ingram is a 30-year-old back now. I don't think Justice Hill is an issue for him. So Dobbins, we might have to be waiting on him for a year to get the full effect of him, but I do think he's going to be usable in year one in some regard. So here, when we're starting to get into these running backs that have a million question marks, I think it's important for us to get some of the youth, because we know that the young running backs is where we want to be. The youth, especially at that position, is where we want to be before they get to that second contract. So being able to grab a future running back one, I think at this point is going to be good for this team, both now and in the future.
Yeah, no, I love J.K. Dobbins, and after the NFL draft, I put out a YouTube video, and it was paired with an article. It was 20 facts about this draft class was the article, and then I pulled 10 of them for the video. And I did a couple of them on J.K. Dobbins, and one of his comps in terms of second round running backs with, I forget what the numbers were, but it was like so many rushing yards and so many receptions. One of the college comps was Ray Rice. So, I mean, yeah, we know what happened, but I mean, Ray Rice was really good for Baltimore for fantasy. And that's why I think, I agree with you that he feels like a Baltimore Raven, like that. That's just, which sucks because again, I'm Penn State, so I hate Ohio State, and I'm the Steelers fan, so I hate Baltimore, but that's just kind of where we're at right now.
So I got running back for a team you hate, and the running back for college that you all don't think as good. So we're doing real well here so far.
We are, and so I loved grabbing J.K. Dobbins there, and I mean, as the third running back off the board in terms of rookies, and it would be true for his rookie draft value as well too. I think his true upside in year one is a kind of Miles Sanders type season where we see him kind of creeping up on Mark Ingram. And then I don't know if it would take a whole injury for Ingram for J.K. Dobbins to rise up, but I think he can certainly catch up to him and then overtake him by the end of the year. So I'm with you that, we might not see it all year one, but I think there's going to be weeks where you can certainly potentially throw him in your lineup and get some good value for him. So I love J.K. Dobbins there. There's really nothing that I have to ask you there, because that would honestly probably have been my pick as well.
Nice.
So I love it. So we'll move on here to the 5.07. The rest of the fourth round went Chris Carson, Cooper Kupp, Mark Andrews, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, and then Calvin Ridley. And then through the fifth went Jerry Jeudy, Keenan Allen, James Conner, A-Rob, Devin Singletary, and then Adam Thielen. So 5.07 here. We're looking at Joe Burrow is still there, DK Metcalf, Baker Mayfield, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, Kenyon Drake, DJ Chark, Tua as well, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Cam Akers, Robert Woods, Todd Gurley is here as well. So where are we continuing to piece together this team here?
I'm generally not somebody who kind of looks at a starting lineup requirements and have to okay, I have to fill this spot. And now I've got all the running backs that I need for my starting lineup. Now it's time to move on to the next position, that kind of thing. But I think that's just the way this draft has fallen for me, because right now DK Metcalf's still on the board. I have no wide receivers yet, and this allows me to get that combination of youth that we just talked about and ultimate upside there. We saw how productive he was, 1A, 1B with AJ Brown in terms of rookie receivers in 2019. And with him still on the board here, this seems like a pretty easy pick to go ahead and get into the wide receiver pool with somebody who's, not a rookie, not quite that young, but somebody who we've already seen in the NFL and seen be successful. And in Seattle, it's always a little bit of a question of the volume, with always running the ball, always playing defense, all that. But we know they have one of the most efficient deep ball throwers in the game with Russell Wilson, and we saw them connect with Metcalf a lot in 2019. So I'm really excited to see what he does he does moving forward. He's a mid wide receiver 2 for me. I think I have him at 14 or 15 right now in terms of my rankings with him. So to see him here in the 5th round without having any other wide receivers yet is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I think that, again, you said it a few times throughout this draft so far, is that there is so much depth at the wide receiver position that I mean, it's not even fun. I mean, like DK Metcalf went, and then his teammate Tyler Lockett went. Just the pick after Diggs, Debo. You still look at the board. DJ Chark is there. Terry McLaurin, Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Jalen Reagor, CeeDee Lamb is up here. Justin Jefferson, Michael Gallup, Devontae Parker. Like, there's a whole lot of these guys here that can just kind of fill out your roster in the middle of your startup and just, smash those quarterbacks if you want to, smash the running backs if you want to. But I think this is prime territory for a lot of these wide receivers. And the only thing that I wanted to ask you about this one that I think is kind of an interesting conversation would be DK Metcalf, who is the you can argue the wide receiver 1 or the wide receiver 2. They're, like you said, 1A, 1B with Tyler Lockett, but on a low volume passing offense. Or, my favorite rookie wide receiver post-draft, pre-draft, CeeDee Lamb, who is coming in probably as the wide receiver 3, maybe the wide receiver 2 at best on a high volume passing offense. Both are like basically kind of the same age. So their career tracks might be, pretty similar. What was the decision for you between Metcalf and CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah, and honestly, it's funny you mentioned that because he was the second choice there if Metcalf wasn't available. I just, I like having that one extra piece of the puzzle of a player that we've seen do it in the NFL, and I absolutely think CeeDee Lamb can do it in the NFL. But I think just that one extra piece of information that we've seen him be, operate an elite skill set, and the fact that we have we've seen the potential on the field, and it looks like it's just going to keep growing. So I like CeeDee Lamb just fine. I just think that we have it's just one little thing in your back of your mind when you're looking at rookies in a startup draft is they haven't done it yet. So that's kind of the tiebreaker for me, I think, between Metcalf and Lamb. And luckily he's on the board here at 606. So if you want me to go ahead and make that pick, that is where I would go right here at 606.
You're taking CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So sweet. That was pretty easy then. I like how that worked out.
Yeah, definitely. That was a professional segue you did there.
So for CeeDee Lamb, we'll talk about his situation. I mean, we talked a little bit about with Dak Prescott and stuff, but for CeeDee Lamb, do you view him coming in initially as the wide receiver 2? He kind of kicks out Michael Gallup, or maybe they try to find a way that all 3 of them are on the field at the same time. And then kind of down the road, I know a lot of people have made a lot about, the contract situation. Is it going to be Michael Gallup who isn't re-signed, or is it them trying to kind of move out of Amari Cooper's contract that he just signed? I'm kind of curious to hear your overall thoughts on how this team is going to shake out and where CeeDee Lamb is kind of eventually going to find himself. I think a lot of people hope that he'll end up being that team's wide receiver 1 and reach his full potential. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that Amari situation is a tough one. I honestly have no idea. Obviously, they like him, but give him that $100 million contract, right? So presumably they gave him that money because they want him to be on the team. So I would like to think that he's not going anywhere. And again, between Gallup and Lamb, I think Lamb is absolutely the more talented of the 2 players. But Gallup, he showed that he, for a little while there before we knew that Amari was getting re-signed, we had a brief window in Dynasty where we thought Gallup might be the wide receiver 1 for the Cowboys this year. And he's kind of fallen all the way down to the wide receiver 3 and a little bit of an afterthought. So he's equally talented, I think, as those guys. And the really fun thing about that offense is all 3 of them have the ability to be moved around. So Cooper obviously very successful in the slot. It seems like Lamb probably is going to start there, so he's going to see that the easiest position, I think, the wide receiver position to learn and to be successful. And so he should be plenty productive in year 1. And then long term, I do think he is going to be the 1 or the 2. As in terms of Amari moving on, I really don't have a good handle on that. I lean no just because of the contract, but it does seem that if Lamb performs like we think he will, then they could be moving on from Gallup just to be able to free up some money to move around elsewhere. But if they could keep all 3 of those guys long term, wow, Dak's future is just so solid, which is why we took him there in the 2nd round.
Yeah, it's going to be, especially because if you think about, at least from salary cap management point, if all that money's on the offensive side, their defense is going to be terrible.
Right. So and we like that for fantasy.
Yeah, it's gonna be like 35, 40-point shootouts every single week. It's gonna be awesome. And I mean, we saw at least last year 3 wide receivers kind of be supported. I mean, so Amari and Gallup, I think they were basically the same stat line wise. I think they both had 1,100 yards. And then Randall Cobb kind of sneakily came in at over 800 himself. So there's definitely, opportunity for all 3 of them to kind of succeed, and maybe not all 3 at the same time. Like we kind of didn't even really see that from the 2017 Rams when, Kupp, Cooks, and Woods all were like fantastic. They kind of went at different points. It was kind of like, whose week is it going to be? I think about the Alabama clip of Judy and I think it was Ruggs, or maybe it was Devonta Smith flipping the coin or rock, paper, scissoring before the route.
Right.
That's kind of how I view this offense is probably going to be. It's like, whose week do we want it to be this week? And it's just going to be fun, but also kind of annoying for a lot of fantasy owners who, one week Amari might be really good. Then the next week it's going to be Gallup. Next week it's going to be Lamb. Then we're going to go back to Gallup, and then it's going to be Lamb again. And then Amari's going to have a 50-point week. And then that's just kind of where we're at.
And I think that is certainly frustrating, especially if you own, say, 2 of those 3 receivers. Like, who do I start? I think there was a situation in 2017 where I had both Woods and Kupp, and it was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to start both because I don't know one of them is going to do it. I don't know which one, so I might as well start both. And that gets you into a little bit of a downside in your weekly lineup. But if we look at the wide receiver position as a whole, I think it completely operates that. There was one true wide receiver 1 last year, and that was Michael Thomas, and everybody else was having, sporadic wide receiver 1 week. So I think the inconsistencies at the position in general kind of helps us out a little bit with that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the way your team is shaking out right here. So we're on the clock at the 7:07, and just to read off the names, because I didn't read them off in between our 5th and 6th, and then I'm just going to keep on going here. So a lot of quarterbacks went off the board: Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston for some reason. I don't know who's not ranking him right there, but that's okay. Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, Tua, Stafford, Cousins, Darnold, Goff, and Luck. That's the entire 7th round up to our pick right now. And then the rest of the skill players, Kenyon Drake, Stephon Diggs, Cam Akers, Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, DJ Chark, Kerryon Johnson, and then Terry McLaurin. So at the 7:07 here, we're looking at Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Jalen Reagor, Jarvis Landry, Justin Jefferson, Zach Ertz at tight end, that we still need a tight end as well too. Michael Gallup, Devontae Parker, Henry Ruggs, Christian Kirk, Hollywood Brown, Kareem Hunt, a lot of these skill position players here. And then just in terms of the quarterback landscape, Garoppolo, Tannehill, Herbert, Bridgewater, Breeze is there, Brady, Gardner Minshew, Haskins, a bunch of these guys. The whole entire 7th round has been all quarterbacks, so it kind of hurt.
Yeah, that was the one concern I had about taking Lamb here. And if he wasn't there, I probably would have taken a quarterback, but there was just so many. Like I would have expected a giant run like this here at the end, and maybe that's my fault for not looking at the other teams on the draft board. But I definitely didn't think 7 to go, and they pretty much took all the ones that I would want. So I think we're going to go away from quarterback 3, and we can wait a little bit. One just a preview, and probably won't get taken in this draft. Maybe once we get to the last round, but Cam Newton is still sitting out there. Then, and if we have quarterbacks as strong as we do with Dak and Mahomes already on board, then taking a shot at a guy like Cam, like for the ultimate upside for a piece that you're going to be able to sell, or substitute him as a starter and be able to get just a ransom for one of those top 2 guys, gives us a little bit of flexibility there that we can look at later. So I think we can continue to avoid our quarterback 3 for now, and go to. I think going to wide receiver again is fine here. There's some intriguing rookies into the 1st round and rookie picks right now with Reagor and Jefferson. But I kind of want to go back to running back. Could you scroll through running backs one more time?
Yeah. So these are at least the top ones right now: Hunt, Vaughn, DJ, Geis, Mostert.
So here in the 7th, I think I want to secure a running back 3 that is going to do something for us in the event of injury or on bye weeks, and certainly. So I think I'm willing to go ahead and grab Kareem Hunt here, and I think he gives us again, some flexibility because he's going to be productive, I think, on a week-to-week basis from a PPR standpoint. Maybe not provide an ultimate upside because Chubb is there, but we saw him perform really well last season in a limited role. And if Chubb was to get hurt, now we're looking at probably a top 10 running back in terms of weekly production. And then again, he was, I think correct me if I'm wrong, was transition tagged. I can't remember which he got to stay here, but I think it's on a 1-year deal. So again, we're going to be in a situation in 2021 where we could be looking at a starter somewhere else. So I think he offers some really sneaky upside this year. And in the 7th round, to be able to get a back that could easily just jump into the top 10, I think gives us some nice upside there at running back 3.
He was a restricted free agent.
Restricted, okay.
Yeah, and they placed a 2nd-round tender on him. So, because I guess he only played. Man, this is only his 4th year in the league.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Time is slow right now, man. It's a flat circle.
That is crazy. Yeah, I like Kareem Hunt a lot in terms of kind of this more than handcuff player. Yeah. Right? He reminds me a lot of Tevin Coleman back when it was Coleman and Devontae Freeman for the Falcons back then, a few years ago as well. And, because there's a lot of backfields that, you can kind of have like 2 running backs going at the same time, but they kind of almost eat into each other in terms of at least rushing workload and maybe receiving workload. But it's very interesting the way at least we project Cleveland's backfield to work is with Chubb getting like the lion's share of the rushing touches, and then Kareem Hunt as almost a PPR only specialist, but we know he's going to be out there, if not both of them at the same time. So that is it's a lot more interesting usage than just 2 guys kind of cannibalizing each other in the entire workload. It's one is one and one is the other, which makes Kareem Hunt very valuable in PPR leagues. And I think some people even have just the way that they've projected out their season, with a certain amount of receptions for Kareem Hunt, he could outscore Nick Chubb just on PPR work kind of alone, with how valuable receiving workload is, even though Chubb's going to rush for 12 or 1,300 yards and have 7 or 8 touchdowns. Just the way that the scoring works, Kareem Hunt's going to be really valuable. So I like that a lot as the RB3, and I like moving the direction over to the running backs because it's a lot of disgustingness kind of whenever you move down here.
Right.
And it's a lot of other pieces too. I mean, Madison is still there too. I don't know how early he's starting to go now, just with the news of Dalvin Cook's holdout. But, a lot of these guys are all primary backups who you need kind of an injury to. Tony Pollard's a favorite. Zach Moss might play the Frank Gore role. Raheem Mostert, kind of who's the hot hand in San Francisco. Those are probably the best ones. Sonny Michel's going to get a bunch of workload. David Johnson, we don't really know how much longer he can keep going. But then, you go down here, Matt Breida, Tariq Cohen, A.J. Dillon, Tevin Coleman, Antonio Gibson, Jordan Howard. Like a lot of these guys, Darrington Evans, are just kind of gross, but they're like useful on your teams. But they're not going to start for you.
Right.
Which is the problem.
Yeah, one thing I do like to do with some of these backfills where we're not 100% sure how it's going to break down is just and when we know that the second back is talented enough to be a fantasy running back one in weeks that he's going to be on the field, is to grab the cheapest one, and that's what we've done here with Kareem Hunt. Another situation, I think you mentioned Raheem Mostert. He's become the most expensive back in San Francisco, but I really like grabbing Tevin Coleman late. That could shake out that way. Madison, you mentioned, is a little bit more obvious now that Cook is threatening a holdout, but I think he was always a good pick in this range because we know Dalvin Cook's injury history, and we saw what Madison was able to do in 100-ish carries or so during his rookie year. So these backfields that are uncertain. Another one you mentioned, David Johnson. Like Duke Johnson, I think is an excellent pick late because again we saw what David Johnson looked like last season, and we didn't see a whole lot. We didn't get what we wanted out of Duke Johnson when he first went to Houston last year after they brought in Carlos Hyde, and he kind of became the guy a little bit. But if David Johnson is 2019 David Johnson, then we could be looking at, was it 2014 or something when Duke Johnson was a running back, fringe running back one, just based on his PPR usage in Cleveland. So I think we're looking at that kind of situation as well. So guys like Kareem Hunt, guys like Duke Johnson and Tevin Coleman, the least expensive part of a clear committee, I think is a good way to build a little bit of upside in your roster.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love it a lot. So 806 here, we'll move on. The rest of the 7th went Phillip Lindsay, Ryan Tannehill, Zach Ertz, Marlon Mack, and Justin Herbert. And then the 8th round, Darius Guice, Tyler Boyd, Keyshawn Vaughn, Darrell Henderson, and Damian Williams. So at the 8.06 here, to read off all the names here, Robert Woods, Jalen Reagor, Jarvis Landry, Justin Jefferson, Michael Gallup, Devontae Parker, Henry Ruggs, Christian Kirk, Hollywood Brown, N'Keal Harry, a lot of wide receivers. Darren Waller, Hunter Henderson, Hawk, and Noah Fant are there for the tight end position. Still a lot of all these other, wide receivers down here too. David Johnson, best available running back, at least right now. Or we can go into the quarterback field, which is still Garoppolo, Brady, Minshew is there as well too, Bridgewater, Breeze. So I'm curious, as the well is starting to dry up here at the 8.06. What is the direction that we're going to be going here?
I think looking at the board and the upside available, and the fact that the only wide receiver that came off the board after our Kareem Hunt pick there was Tyler Boyd. So we still have that upside in those into the first round wide receivers there with Reagor and with Reagor and Jefferson. So I think I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on Jalen Reagor here. A clear opportunity with Philly. I guess we're loading up a little bit if you're concerned about having multiple players on the same team, but I think Philly is a decent one to do that with if you're going to do it. Future wide receiver one, I think, for that team, maybe not necessarily in 2020 in his rookie season. If for some reason Alshon becomes Alshon again and Deshaun Jackson plays more than one game, JJ Arcega-Whiteside becomes a thing. I don't know. It just seems like the opportunity here at the wide receiver position and that particular team is kind of, out of this world a little bit. So I think he's a great pick here in the 8th round and continuing our youth building at the wide receiver position with guys that, again, are young, but also guys that are probably going to be productive in 2020 in some regard.
Yeah. I love Jalen Reagor. I would probably take him over Jerry Jeudy in rookie drafts. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's a decision for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love Jalen Reagor, especially whenever you compare him to the fact that we got him 2 rounds later than CeeDee Lamb, and then Jeudy was up here. Jeudy was in the top of the 5th.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the pricing in terms of where the other rookie wide receivers went ahead of him so far is fantastic. And we talked a lot about Jalen Reagor on a lot of the rookie drafting lessons, because he always seemed to be the pick in the later half of the first round, just because it was prime time every single time at like 107, 108, 109, just right there, Jalen Reagor. So there's a lot of opportunity. I love it. And I think what I would want to ask you and to kind of touch on more, because I agree with what I'm probably thinking that you're going to say. But I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it. So Jalen Reagor, we've built, in my opinion, a pretty solid win now piece, at least, with Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott in Superflex, and then Miles Sanders and J.K. Dobbins, DK Metcalf, is going to be great as well too. And then Jalen Reagor. So I'm wondering, for you, what the decision was between a guy like Jalen Reagor versus a Robert Woods, who, is going to produce, we know is going to produce now as probably the surefire wide receiver 1A, 1B in LA. Maybe some of these other guys down here too, who have similar upside, like Devontae Parker, maybe Hollywood Brown, some of these wide receivers here who are, older, but they're still producing. What the decision was for you between Reagor and those guys?
I think it's, again, just a question that the youth is still on the board, and Woods is somebody who I think is pretty much always undervalued, with what he's done since he's been in Los Angeles. He's had that career renaissance, and absolutely think he is worth taking there for some guaranteed production. I think the real issue, though, is that at the wide receiver position, again, it's just so many names left still. They're just,
right.
I mean, like I can find older, maybe not quite as good as Robert Woods. He's probably going to be another 1,000-yard receiver again this season. So maybe we don't get quite that level of production from these other veterans down here. But I just think those points, and especially the future, are available later on. Robert Woods, 28. I think is he going to be 29 this season? Once somewhere in the middle of the season, I think. So I think there with the upside still on the board in terms of the youth movement here, that we're doing ourselves a little bit of a disservice by taking an asset that's only going to probably decline from here. So we might as well keep building up that roster value and increasing our upside for the future, while still being able to get some of that more consistent production later on in the draft from some older guys that are maybe not going to do as well as Robert Woods, but are going to give us production from week to week for that short-term run.
Yeah. And that's what I thought you were going to say, which I agree with. So I love it. So we're just going to move on. 9.07 here. Jalen Reagor's a fantastic pick. We don't need to touch on that anymore. If anybody out there needs help with pulling the trigger on Jalen Reagor, just message me. And we'll do it up. But the rest of the 8th round went Robert Woods, Mark Ingram, Jimmy G, T.Y. Hilton, Michael Gallup, and Tom Brady. And then the 9th round, Ronald Jones, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, Alexander Madison, and T.J. Hawkinson and Julian Edelman. So the tight end's starting to slowly move off the board here a little bit too, which we still need. And just a heads up, it's going to make you draft one eventually in the 12 rounds. That's just the way it's going to go. So we're going to need at least one. But we'll see how it goes. So 9.07, there's still a bunch of the wide receivers here. A lot of the guys that I listed for the last pick here. Running backs, still David Johnson, Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert, kind of these older, but they're still going to have volume kind of guys. Then a lot of the backups as well, too. Tight end position, Darren Waller, Noah Fant, Dallas Goedert, Tyler Higbee, Mike Gesicki, and then a lot of these other guys down here as well. And then quarterbacks, still Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Brees, Gardner Minshew. Cam is still there, so we're good there. So at 9.07 here, where are we looking to go at?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways we could go here. You mentioned we still need a tight end, so I don't hate picking someone like Noah Fant here, but I do worry a little bit about that situation. Like you said, they added Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, obviously there. It just seems like there's going to be a lot of weapons in that in that offense, in that passing offense. And I like Drew Lock. I hope he succeeds. He's giving every opportunity to succeed. If he can't succeed with what they put around him, then I don't know what to say about him. So, but I am concerned that he can't support maybe one or two fantasy weapons there. So I think Fant maybe gets lost a little bit there. And they also drafted Albert O. I'm not going to try his last name.
Okwuegbunam.
Okwuegbunam. Yeah, I'm sure that's 100% right. And he has, I think, a lot of touchdown upside too. I've speculated that there's a chance that while Fant leads in fantasy points, I think there is a chance that he gets a lot of touchdowns stolen from Alberto there. So I think we can still wait on tight end. I think we're after Fant, we're entering another big tier there. Quarterback, it would be nice to grab another one here as well. But again, we're just so strong. I don't know that we necessarily need to yet as somebody who's never going to play for us except for injuries or backups. There is, I think, the case to take one from a value standpoint for trade value, but from the team we're building, I think we're building a juggernaut right now. So I want to keep moving away from that and go back to wide receiver. Now, the wide receiver choices here are really interesting because we have the upside picks with Jefferson and Ruggs and these rookies, and even the second-year player like Marquise Brown. But we have some youth, right? We have Jalen Reagor, we have CeeDee Lamb there, and while we think they're going to produce, there's certainly a chance where rookies are not going to do as well as we think in year one. So I'd like to grab some consistent points here with Jarvis Landry coming off the injury, I know, but it seems like he's going to be fine. Had the best season of his career last year. Still that Cleveland team, we hyped them up so much last year. There was no way they could really live up to that, but still there's all the pieces in place. A new offensive mind and Stefanski coming over. So I think Jarvis Landry can provide like kind of an anchor at the wide receiver position for points for us week to week while our youth kind of develop and still allow us to build towards that win now, kind of win now with youth kind of strategy that we're working with right now.
Yeah, so I like this a lot, and I think this was I love the way that this shook out, and the fact that you could take Jalen Reagor at 8.06 and you passed on a guy like Robert Woods, but then you were able to come back with another Robert Woods type wide receiver and Jarvis Landry a whole entire round later, which I think is awesome and is really, a lot of people say that he might not be ready for training camp or the preseason or maybe even the regular season, whatever, if we even have those, I guess. But that at least for the now, Jarvis Landry, I think, is a fantastic option. He's going to be pretty consistent as well, too. And a lot of people would argue that he is also in a 1A, 1B situation with Cleveland, with Odell Beckham Jr., even though that they signed Austin Hooper. I personally am not too worried about that in terms of him moving or getting targets stolen away from him. And I also see that entire offense as a whole just being better than they were last year. I think Baker Mayfield is in for a much better season than he was last year. So therefore, Landry, OBJ, even with the addition of Austin Hooper, I think that whole team is going to be a lot better than last year. So I'm all about grabbing some of those assets at a depreciated value than what they were with all the hype last year too. So I love the Jarvis Landry pick there at 9.07.
Yeah, like I said, I think it provides an anchor for us while our youth develops, and if that upside hits on the youth, and we still have the consistent points of Landry, like we're on fire for this year. So I like that a lot. Coming up here, did you want to do the rundown before I? I got excited to make a pick again.
No, yeah, I can real quick. It's just a bunch of tight ends and running backs: Darren Waller, Noah Fant, and Dallas Goedert at tight ends, and then David Johnson, Sony Michel, James White, Raheem Mostert, Tony Pollard, Zach Moss, and Tevin Coleman. I remember I'm getting flashbacks of when I was doing Dynasty startups pre-draft, and this is the area where a lot of blue is going to come up here. It's just going to be a bunch of running backs. So I'm going to prepare you for that and prepare everybody watching. This is going to be a lot of blue down here. Although with all the wide receivers here, I would imagine we'd see a nice sprinkle of some orangey, yellow, whatever that is in here as well too. But yeah, anyway, so best available here, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Parker, Henry Ruggs, all these wide receivers here. Running backs are Matt Breida, who I think is interesting, Tariq Cohen, A.J. Dillon, Rashad Penny, Antonio Gibson, Jordan Howard, who's also interesting, Darrington Evans. And then we still need a tight end, but so I'll run them down. Higbee, Gesicki, Irv, Hayden Hurst, Jonnu Smith, O.J. Howard is there, Ian Thomas, Gronk. We can go a lot of different ways here where with this 10th round pick. So where are we looking to go at here with 10.06?
Man, it's really too difficult again to pass up wide receiver. Still a first round receiver on the board with Justin Jefferson, so I think we've got to go there. Just nothing behind Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson on that wide receiver core there. Tajay Sharp, Olabisi Johnson, Chad Beebe, KJ Osborne. These guys excite you, not me. So I think that Justin Jefferson is going to step into a role where he's immediately going to see 90 to 100 targets, maybe even more, depending on what happens with Adam Thielen. The one issue I do have with Jefferson is it'll be interesting to see how if they use him as a true slot, which I think really is his only real position in the NFL. And Adam Thielen has done most of his damage from snaps in the slot. So it'll be interesting to see how they break that down. But just because the target share is funneled so highly to those two guys, and then with the sprinkling of the tight ends, I think too, with Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph. But those two guys seem like locks for 90 to 100 targets each at the floor, and potential for 120 plus or so, I think, depending on what they do with that offense. So love doing that because we're continuing. It's like we have a team where we're building through the youth of wide receivers, which is because I think really the movement anymore was kind of the general strategy several years ago. But being able to do that, there's no question that it provides us with insulation for our value. If you're doing a rebuild and you have a bunch of strong running backs, one strategy you can do to kind of preserve value is to move those into the wide receiver position. So we're able to do that naturally here while still putting points on the board with some veterans. We got some strong running backs, and the entire league's going to be playing catch up at quarterback. So the fact that we're still able to grab these upside rookies here and what has been called the best wide receiver class in history, we might as well keep building off of that. Like you said, a bunch of running backs went off the board. I'm not really that concerned with that. We do only have 3, but we have 3 really strong options, I think. So still some place to go there. We'll probably have to go to running back here with our 11th round pick.
Yeah, so I love the Justin Jefferson pick as well too. It's gonna get you hurt in terms of the fantasy pros grade because you're moving away from the running backs. But I love the pick of Justin Jefferson, and I think I really want to highlight what you said there is that it's you're insulating the value with the young first round wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. Even if he doesn't produce like all too much this year, he could have like 500 yards and finish outside like the top 50 wide receivers, and he'll still have, if not the value that he has right now, like very similar value next year, just because of how the market works and everything. And so whenever you are deciding between a guy like that who has very secure value, I mean, a lot of these other wide receivers I think are very much in that same range as well too. Henry Ruggs, I think Marquise Brown could do that as well too. If N'Keal Harry has a good season this year, I think his value will go up. T. Higgins, we know that his ultimate value is going to come when they get rid of AJ Green, so I think his value will sustain Denzel Mims, Michael Pittman, Deontay Johnson, Darius Slayton. Like a lot of these guys are going to sustain value year over year. And a lot of these running backs, I hate to tell some of you guys if you guys love them, but they're not going to sustain value. Yeah. So I think that is really what I wanted to highlight with your pick here, is that when you go with Justin Jefferson versus a Jordan Howard for the 2020 volume, right? He's going to be the main running back for Miami, and you're going to get points from him. But he's been dipping in value for years now, ever since he left Chicago, even in Chicago. And I think that's just going to continue to slide down, and you're just going to lose value ultimately with Jordan Howard. And there's really no point in grabbing other guys like Justice Hill, like Tariq Cohen, Lynn Bowden, Naeem Hines, Carlos Hyde, for your roster, because we're not really worried about the starting lineup right now. And you already have Sanders, Dobbins, and Hunt. So why not just secure and insulate your team's value so that year over year you give yourself a fantastic opportunity to trade for other pieces that you want and you need for your starting lineup. And then also just being able to continue to, have a lot of I guess, trade opportunities and a lot of different options in terms of directions that you can take your team, and whatever fits your need.
Yeah, and just think about what you would have to pay for those right now in a non-startup situation. Like I'm still going to have to pay late first, early second round valuation on Jefferson, and Carlos Hyde is going to be a fourth round rookie pick in 2021. Yeah. So somebody probably jumps on that. So you're taking that, and if you want the Carlos Hyde situation for some reason, then trade Justin Jefferson for something else, and then Carlos Hyde will be a throw-in in that deal. So there's really no reason to invest that here, and because of that, I'm going to retract my statement about having to take a running back right here, because why even delve into this? These are things that are not going to be valuable going forward, whereas the wide receivers still are. However, I think we could easily go back to what I think we could easily take. I think my favorite pick here would probably be like Marquise Brown, just because of the upside he presents there. But I did see you scrolling through. I see Michael Pittman there still on the board. So I want to go there, as I'm excited about Michael Pittman for the Colts. Again, another fringe, I think, first round guy in a SUPERFLEX startup, SUPERFLEX rookie draft for sure. Right on the edge of that first and second round. So again, we've added Rager, Jefferson, and Pittman in the last 4 rounds, and we have added basically 4 first round wide receivers in 2020 rookie drafts, I think, to our squad here. So again, another player that's going to have a large opportunity across from T.Y. Hilton. There's no other player on the roster that offers his size speed combination. Phillip Rivers, new quarterback in town, knows how to play with these big, fast guys. He had a guy named Vincent Jackson back in the day that he was very successful with, and I think Michael Pittman comps to really well. So again, just building that roster value here, not worried about starters yet here in June. We have, 2-3 months here to figure out if we need to add some depth at running back. And I know we still don't have a tight end, so we have to pick one here. But I'll let you read off the names before we get to that.
Yeah. So again, still so much blue that came off here. And Cam Newton went off at 12.04.
Yeah.
I know we were kind of on Newton watch because you mentioned that in terms of pairing him with Mahomes and Dak. So is that about the price that you would be looking at Cam?
I think anywhere after the 10th round is a good spot for him. We obviously have no idea where he's going to play, and I know I'm putting a lot of faith in the fact that I think he is going to play again at some point, even if it's not not necessarily in 2020 as a starter. I think he could be in a necessarily like a Jameis Winston situation where he's going to sit for a year and is going to be a starter again. Winston is obviously the health concern, but I know we've seen workout videos, and that's not the same thing. But I don't not knowing Cam, because I don't know Cam Newton, right? I don't know if anybody truly knows Cam Newton, but knowing him as a competitor and somebody, I just think that he's going to be a starter at some point again in this league. And I don't think I can name 20 quarterbacks right now that'll be starting as of this recording, in 2020 that I would rather have than Cam Newton. So anywhere after the 10th round, I just think because of the way we've built our team with the 2 strong running backs at the top, that wasn't quite as important as continuing to build the other positions.
Yeah, and I was curious to see if at any point you were going to bring up Drew Brees or not, just as like a solid and great, maybe 1 year quarterback piece. Then you'd have 3 top 10 2020 options, but more than likely. But when I thought about it more, and I was wondering if you were going to go for it, but when I thought about it more, I was like, why? Why would you have to do that? You know?
Yeah, it's the same thing. And again, if we hadn't come away with those two top quarterbacks, this would be probably a very different draft. But again, he's not going to start for you on, maybe in some very rare matchups where Dak has a really, I don't know, I can't even think of one off the top of my head where it would happen. But I think there are situations where you're playing matchups with those three and you have Breeze in your lineup. But largely, I think, again, he's just going to be on there for bye weeks or injuries, which, it is important to protect in a super flex format. But when you have such strong options at the top, you're almost just, hurting your overall team value by taking a quarterback that old, and also limiting your week to week upside by throwing away points on a player that's probably not going to start for you very often.
Right. So the rest of the 11th round went Duke Johnson, Antonio Gibson, Joshua Kelly, Damian Harris, and Darrington Evans, and then Latavius Murray is the other running back here in the 12th round. Then Breeze, Bridgewater, and Cam at 1201, 3, and 4, and then Devontae Parker, the pick right before us. And I'm actually thinking it's going to let you pick a player other than a tight end, because
really?
I can hit draft.
Okay, well then
guys, so
then I don't think I want to go to tight end. If we did have to go to tight end, I think I would go to Mike Gesicki here.
Okay.
He came on very strong once Miami started to play last season. One of the best combine performances by a tight end ever a couple of years ago, and we've kind of lost that a little bit playing through the Adam Gase regime there in Miami, right? So now we have a coaching staff there that knows what they're doing, and it seems like he could be a focal point, considering that they didn't really do anything at wide receiver this offseason, are rolling with Devontae Parker and Preston Williams. So he's easy third target there for me if we were going to take a tight end. But I think we have to. I mean, we don't have to, right? So we might as well keep punting it. Yeah. I think there are a few other options we could take in that range. If we don't get one here, next round we could get somebody like Irv Smith or Jonnu Smith. Rob Gronkowski, I think, is still on the board if we want immediate points, and his counterpoint OJ Howard there for the upside. So I think once we're in this range of tight ends, Gesicki is the clear leader on there. But there are other options I think we can still use, and tight end stupid, so let's not take one here.
Yeah, Jared Cook is still out there too, if you just wanted a piece to throw in that's going to perform. So
right, Hayden Hurst I think is probably going to be a back end tight end one. So there's just so many in this range that there's no reason to. So can you go through running back one more time before I make my pick? I think I know who I want, but let's see.
Who's that? Oh, RB handcuff for Miles Sanders. It tells you that you interesting.
Because I have him, so
because you have
there.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's kind of fun.
So I'm wondering if they would have that for. I don't know. I'm assuming they wouldn't have that for any of the other ones.
Huh. Interesting. Well, at running back, I think we could be okay there, but there's still so much value at wide receiver. Why not keep hammering it? So the guy we just talked about, Marquise Brown, still on the board and on the 12th round is our wide receiver 6. That's some pretty nice upside in a start 10 9 or 10 player league. He's going to be in the lineup for us, and that kind of week winning upside, he could just win the league for us on one play. He's that kind of player. So I can't go away from that here in the 12th round.
Yeah, I'm with, and again, it's the same reason why you picked, Jefferson and Pittman and Marquise Brown. It's the exact same argument, and I think that's why you got an F. Was because you just kept loading up.
I'm terrible. You guys do not listen to anything that I say.
I'm wondering if they would change that. Can I change?
But isn't that rated for a redraft though?
I don't think so. I think this is Dynasty.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that's really, it does say 12 team Dynasty right there. That's really strange. I guess I'm bad, you guys. I don't know.
I'm just curious to see how this grade would work out if we took see, there you go. You would have gotten a D+ if you took Higbee.
Oh, okay. So it bumped up a few points since I didn't take a tight end.
Because you didn't have a full lineup. But
D's get degrees, right? So,
Yeah, D+. There you go. So we'll go back.
But no, I mean, this team is clearly built. It's I think it can win now, but we insulated all the value with those young wide receivers. So if we have to, if we get into a situation we play and we're and we start out like 4-0, 5-0, something like that, even 4-1, and we're clearly competing, and if we need to, we can move some of those young pieces for more consistent points. But even those young guys, I think, are going to provide some points for us in year one. And with our starting lineup there, I think it's pretty maximized. Even if Hunt doesn't become the starter, I think we're still getting points out of him. And again, we're there's nobody going to catch us at the quarterback position, which in my opinion is the most important one in SUPERFLEX leagues.
So I'm curious, we had a little bit of a tight end conversation here, but just to kind of get more of your thoughts on on where you would eventually go tight end. Should this be an actual draft? Let's assume that Mike Gesicki made it back to you in the 13th round here. Would you then go Mike Gesicki if a lot of these other wide receivers went, or would you still keep hammering out wide receivers?
Yeah, I think at that point I would. We have what do we have? Six really strong options there. Yeah. 7 really strong options there at wide receiver. So I think at that point we can think a little bit more about the roster construction, even though I still don't think it's super important, just based on those tight ends still available. That's a position that again, I treat it kind of like quarterbacks. If I'm not going to go early, then I'm going to wait for a while and kind of take the value where it presents itself. There was an option, I think, in the 5th round, I think, where Evan Ingram just missed us, and I think he would have been an option at that point. Mm-hmm. But if I'm not getting Kittle, Andrews, or Ingram, I think I'm basically waiting and just taking someone that's going to score in year one, and then supplementing with an upside play. Somebody like Jack Doyle is basically free right now, and we have, again, Phillip Rivers, somebody who knows how to use the tight end position there in an offense with, where he's going to be a force on the field, I think, from an offensive perspective. So I just think there are so many cheap points at tight end. Supplement that with a Jay Sternberger later, as an upside play who's going to be a starter this year, but somebody who also offers the use. So there's so many ways to go. If it's not a tight end premium league, then if I can't get one of those early guys, then I'm probably just going to wait forever.
Yeah, are you going to hit a point where you just kind of slam them and just kind of go like 3, maybe 4, so you have kind of a streaming option?
Yeah, and especially in like obviously dynasty leagues are more than 12 rounds. So if you get to the point where you still don't have one that you feel good about starting in week 1, you can just, in a row, you can grab Jared Cook, Eric Ebron, Jack Doyle, and then still come back with some rookie upside, and like Adam Troutman or Dawson Knox from last year or something like that. So I think there's just so many ways to build a committee at that position. And really all you're looking for a tight end one score on a weekly basis is a touchdown. And any of those guys are going to provide that on a week-to-week basis. It's certainly not as consistent as those earlier guys, but I think you could argue just as consistent as some of those middle tier guys, and you're spending obviously way less capital to do that.
All righty. Yeah. Good deal. So I love the draft overall. I thought it was really good in terms of, going young, but still going for a lot of upside. This reminds me a lot of Curtis Patrick's startup whenever I had him on before the draft. We just, kind of hammered out these first or second or third year players. And that's how his team shook out. And I think it's kind of telling whenever a lot of these dynasty analysts that I have coming on, like you and Curtis Patrick, Ryan McDowell, a lot of you guys are, just going young. You're not worried about drafting, Allen Robinson or, Kerryon Johnson, James Conner, Keenan Allen, like those types of guys. And you're just gonna, why not just, like you said, I think the motto of this was insulating value, right? So just sustaining value on a year-to-year basis, with no huge swings in terms of like your top end guys. Those are for more of your depth positions that you can kind of just when you enter the redraft mode of the end season, where you're just kind of playing whoever has the best opportunity every single week. But right now at the beginning of June, it's all about building value on your roster, and it's all about just looking ahead and what's going to help you year over year in the different directions that you can take every single year. If you're ready for, a championship push, or if maybe your team underproduced compared to what you thought it would be, then you can, you still have a lot of opportunity to kind of help sell for, picks down the future and rebuild that value.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just gives you so much more flexibility. If you draft I don't know, like you mentioned earlier, Robert Woods, and he has a bad season. You're not going to be able to sell him for anything. He's done. He's 30 years old. He had a bad season. He's probably worse than AJ Green at this time next year if something like that happens. Whereas, with our young wide receivers, if Jalen Reagor for some reason doesn't see the field as much as we do, he still was a first round pick just last year, and somebody's still going to want to buy him. Whether you can say that's buying low, selling low, whatever you want to say, you're moving that on, but you're still able to use that to get something back for your money if you decide to go that way. So such an important thing. We have to remember this is Dynasty. You can play to win now, but I think you can win now and win later. You can do both with the right picks, the right players in the right situation. So stay young when you can,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, Matt, thank you so much for hopping on and running through this mock draft with me. Let the people out there know where they can find you, what you're working on. Maybe you got any projects coming up. Let the people out there know where they can hit you up at.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at MattPriceFF. All of my work at DynastyLeagueFootball.com, where I co-host the DLF Dynasty podcast with Ryan McDowell and Dan Myler, the Dynasty Game Night podcast with Addison. We got to get you on to play some games, man. How's that not happened yet? Where we have, it's basically like a game show where if you like games and you like fantasy football, you'll probably like that show. And then in terms of writing, I have to tell you, Addison, since I started podcasting has been the worst thing for my writing. Like podcasting is, it's a little bit more fun for me. But I do write the mailbag when I get questions. Sometimes it's a struggle. We have got we've got a very smart audience because I put it out there sometimes that I'm looking for questions for the DLF mailbag. And, there's like one or maybe sometimes even zero responses. So that article doesn't exist without you guys. Send in your questions to me at MattPriceFF, and we'll get you a long form answer for your Dynasty questions this off season. So that's my writing. That's my podcast. And Addison, thanks, man. This was so much fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So please, guys, if you're watching, please go follow. If you're not already, follow Matt. Listen to the DLF Dynasty podcast. It's fantastic. I know I've listened to a lot of them because I have way more time at work right now to just listen to like 17 million podcasts. So I'm going through the backlog. I'm with you. I think it's hilarious when Ryan says trash. Like when he
it's so
trash.
funny.
It's so great. So if you want to hear Ryan call players trash, the latest series that DLF did on the podcast of going through every single rookie from every division and calling them cash stash or future trash. I think it's it's so funny. It's so funny. And then Dynasty Game Night is fantastic to listen to as well too. I'm not good at the name game at all. I'm awful at it. And I really hope that like whenever you guys edit those, that there's like 15 minutes of dead air for all those name game answers, because I don't know how it's possible for somebody to get it within like a minute or two.
There is often dead air, but Russ, I think that game is really unfair for guests because since Russ and John and I are on it, the one or two of us are on it every week. We get to play more often, so we're more used to it. So it's a little bit unfair, but there is often a lot of dead air in between things, and we edit that out. But sometimes it just hits right away once you realize the theme and sometimes the hardest thing is figuring out what team the player is for. And then once you have that clue, it kind of just clicks. So we'll have to have you on and see if we can embarrass you a little bit with John and Russ.
I would love to. So to everybody watching, thank you so much for watching. Please, if you're not already, subscribe to the DLF YouTube channel, hit that notifications button, like this video as well too, and leave a comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of Matt's picks, if you would rather go somewhere else. If you have any questions or anything like that, hit us up in the comments and we'll get you an answer right away if it's coming from me or somebody else, or sometimes if it's a question directed for one of my guests, I'll even go directly to them and then answer for them in the comments. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will catch you guys next week with another episode of Drafting Lessons. See ya.